Welcoming you to a life of awareness, the Presence Projects is excited for you to join us for today's podcast with your host, Paul Kerzner.
Hello and welcome to episode 10 of Are You Being Present? My name is Paul Kerzner. I want to welcome you to the present moment. I want to welcome you to the here and now. And I want to thank you for joining us. The topic for today's podcast is perception of presence. I have the joy and honor of introducing today's podcast guest, Andrew Ecker. He's an energetic architect and wears many other hats. Andrew is a very special and unique individual, and I've had the great honor of getting to know him. Andrew, I'd really like for you to introduce yourself and speak a little bit more about what it means to be an energetic architect, and also talk a little bit about the vibrational programming that you've been involved in.
Excellent. Thank you, Paul. I really am excited about sharing this information with you. First of all, I feel like these teachings that I'm going to share are very powerful, and in order for me to articulate them, I would like to introduce myself here. And my name is Andrew Ecker. My mother, her name was Kathy Lindsay. My father, Dale Ecker. My mother's mother, Elva Gallegos. She was an Apache woman from New Mexico. My father's mother, Evelyn Beatty, an Irish woman from Pennsylvania. My mother's father, Leroy Lindsay, Apache man from Arkansas. My father's father, Wayne Ecker, Algonquin and German from Pennsylvania. I have one daughter. Her name is Bailey. The topic for today, perception of presence, ultimately goes back in me to a place of understanding my own spatial energy. So I'm going to talk about three what I would call parts of perception and how perception creates presence. And this first part, understanding our individual spatial energy, works simultaneously with two other parts that I've identified within the creation of energetic architecture and vibrational programming. So this first place of understanding my own spatial energy is a gateway into the fortification of the metaphysical architecture of my reality, and ultimately whatever comes through the subatomic frequency, or the place in which wave becomes matter. This is in turn manipulated and changed and transformed by a process I call vibrational programming, bringing my own present state into alignment with the energy in which I am trying to manifest in my life. Now, this energy field in turn begins to create a definition of the world around me. That definition then helps to fortify the metaphysical architecture of the world in which I live. Now, I'm going to break this down to the audience as pragmatically as I possibly can, in a way of helping them understand how they may begin to create a world around themselves that is beautiful in alignment with their highest level of consciousness. We begin by understanding our own spatial energy inside of ourselves, the place in which our soul is manifesting experience. Experience is ultimately defined by energy in the container of emotion. If, for instance, I'm wanting to program the vibration of one of the instruments I use, the flute, the Mayan trumpet, the drum, whatever it is, even my own singing voice, if I am trying to energetically convey to my soul and to the people who are around me in the audience and all of my relations, the air, the water, the fire, the earth, everything that resonates with my own personal experience, what I do is put myself inside the container of the energy that I am manifesting. If it is a place in which I'm feeling a financial burden, I in turn put my energy field in a place where I feel financially abundant. Now, these are like applications on a smartphone or on an iPhone. When we tap the application on our phone, the programming of that phone begins to manifest. The soul is programmed through experience. So if I want the soul inside of me, my source of life itself, the energy that was here before the very foundations of the earth, if I want to attune that to experience and ultimately fortify the metaphysical architecture of my reality, I call on the programming. That programming opens a gateway in which my own spatial energy begins to resonate. That resonant frequency then fortifies the space around me. So in other words, when I'm thinking about abundance, when I'm thinking about financial prosperity, when I'm thinking about the place in which my dreams can happen, the words inside of my mind become synonymous with the sound of the air flowing through the trees. In other words, I'm thinking about abundance. The wind is fortifying that space inside of my mind. And now I am encouraged to understand that the universe has a path for me to be led to abundance. Disciplining ourselves inside of that container, Paul, is the practice of being not only a human being, but an earthling and a member of the universe, a spiritual being, an energetic body. And this relates to presence because every present moment is an opportunity for us to come into agreement with our highest self, to manifest the dreams, the wishes, the calling that we have on our life. This is an important process in understanding these parts. The parts of what creates the human experience resonate for me in a 3, in a triangle. That triangle is the person that I am, the present state of my energy, then in turn fortifying the definition of my reality, what I call the metaphysical architecture, then in turn vibrationally programming the space in which matter becomes, or energy, becomes matter. This could even be the form of a sign in our contemporary culture, like even a sign driving down the freeway. I see a sign that says, love is abundant, right at the moment that I'm thinking about my beloved relationship, my partner in life. You see, that in turn is fortifying my energetic field. Now, there is a process in which we become attuned to this level of security within understanding our path, and that is washing away the insecurities. For instance, there's people out there that may hear a group laughing inside of a bar and initially think, hey, they're laughing at me. Well, this is the metaphysical architecture of your reality, defining your perception of the present moment. But unfortunately, insecurity has led you to a place of creating a vehicle for your life that does not serve your highest process. Instead, it serves this idea inside of your mind that you're less than your highest process. And this in turn can fortify that space in which the signs around us begin to determine this place of captivity. And ultimately, the soul, Paul, is in a place of freedom and sovereignty from the contemporary forms of captivity. And we as spiritual individuals, energetic individuals, are breaking free from those chains and finding the beauty. And when we find the beauty, we begin to define our reality by that, and in turn fortifying the vibrational programming of ourself, in turn fortifying the metaphysical architecture of our world, and bringing through that space, that matrix of life, things that in turn define that. And that in that space is that place of beauty. And that resonant frequency, of course, has a cycle. It has a cycle just like everything in our world has a cycle. We may be in a place where we feel the presence of the victim. I'm a victim of situation and circumstance, but that victim state is not going to be there when we learn from the victim and we step into the place of infinite possibility, realizing that ultimately our life is laid before us in a way that leads to prosperity exceedingly and abundantly above anything that we can ever hope or imagine. Understanding that the flat tire that we get in our car is not a flat tire, it's a diversion from some calamity. We stub our toes so we didn't lose our foot. You see? This is how we begin to define our life in a way that serves our highest process. And this is beyond situation or circumstance. This is into the definition of any situation or circumstance, leading us to that higher level of good. In turn, we begin to process through service. Service brings us to a place where we can impart the wisdoms that our soul has learned in this human body. And then in turn, it creates gratitude. And that gratitude cycle is the place of complete abundance in which we become content with our lives. And we say to ourselves, I am in love with myself. I am in love with the path that the universe has created for me. I have an abundant love that is helping to define the restoration and regeneration of our planet. But ultimately, this steps back to presence. All of this beauty is defined by the present. In the present moment is that place of agreement with the universe that we can have infinite possibilities, that we can be the mastery of our own self, and in turn create a community, create an architecture, create a world that is beautiful.
It's interesting to hear you speak on this topic. One of the things that I talk about with my patients is that reality is perception and perception is reality. That the way that we perceive life is the way that it actually is. And that is why it is so important to meter and be conscious of our words and our thoughts, because these things become things. They will manifest on the exterior. And what I've seen for myself, as well as with the people I've worked with, is that our internal state of being always mirrors the external world that we live in. And I think it's important for all of us to be conscious of this fact that perception is reality. And we have to be really careful with what we say and how we speak and how we feel, because we are consciously creating our world.
Very true, Paul. You know, for me, the challenge inside of the container of the language that you're speaking is ultimately when I'm driving down the road or when I'm walking in Walmart, for instance, and I see a person that's completely obese and I see beauty in them. How is it that I cannot see beauty in them? If I can't see beauty in them, I can't see beauty in myself. These are the challenges of fortifying the metaphysical architecture that defines the perception that you're talking about. You see, it's easy to see beauty in something that we know is beautiful. Where is the discipline in that, though, to bring the mind to that place of higher evolution? You know, for me, it's seeing the beauty in those situations and circumstances and allowing that infinite possibility to manifest. The infinite possibility is the place in which we hold the highest level of perception for ourselves. You know, when we see the drug addict, we see these individuals that we have termed in our minds in these processes of definition, which is really a fundamental place of evolution for survival. We've learned to determine that these berries are poisonous and these berries aren't. Well, we've done this with people. We've said this to ourselves. You know, this is something that we can evolve above and begin to define our world with beauty. And when we define our world with beauty and we meet the challenge of that, seeing beauty in our life, we then reinforce the metaphysical architecture that creates our reality, and in turn, that abundant flow begins to happen. That abundant flow, when it manifests, every part of our reality. The obese person is not the obese person anymore. The obese person is the sign that we are in a place of abundance. There's so much wealth that people are eating themselves to death. I want to believe that this is a sign of abundance for my own self. Now, this may be contradictory to most people's perception, but ultimately I'm talking about things that define our internal process, Paul. The internal process of how we define people and our relationship to the planet. It's a struggle for me to look at a Coke bottle when I'm in the wilderness and see beauty, Paul. I see that and I think to myself, Coca-Cola should be paying me because I'm viewing them right now. You see, there's an anger that wells up in me. But yet, there's a possibility there that maybe I would need the bottle of Coca-Cola to bring water to myself. You see, there's a way of defining these things in our life that changes that subjective matter into beauty. And that's what I'm saying the present moment has, is that potential.
I think it's really powerful when you talk about looking at all these different objects and subjects and reframing them and refining them into something that has more potential. That they are more open instead of shutting it down. And so when I hear you talk about trying to find the love and acceptance for the people, places, and things that you see, what we're doing is we're holding space in the present moment. We're not using our subjective feelings, thoughts, and words to shut it down, to objectify it, and to put it into a place where it's closed off. There's a lot of power in perception, and I'm really glad that we had a chance to discuss this, because I think it's a really important topic for people to hear, to think about, to understand that the reality that we exist in, that we are ultimately responsible and we are ultimately the creators of it and the co-creators of it.
Truth. It's truth, Paul. It's truth. And you know, this is an internal process that brings us to a place where we are defining the empathetic response in our minds. And if we look at the way that the empathetic response works, that empathetic reasoning, that place of agreement with our fellow selves, our fellow human beings, and also the empathy that we feel for the air, the water, the fire, the earth, what we're doing is we're opening up millions of neural pathways in our minds. In fact, you can say that in a lot of ways, that empathetic response is a response in which we begin to really become an earthling, really become a spiritual being, really transcend this body into more of a place of feeling. And aren't we all hungry to feel, to experience? Aren't we hungry for life? It's not so much the tools that we use to get there that are important. What's ultimately important is how we define, how we perceive, how we relate. And that, for me, is the important catalyst for my own human development.
One of the greatest challenges that we face in 21st century society is the disconnection from each other, from life, from nature. And so what I hear you talking about is the reconnection, the ability to reconnect by ultimately seeing the love and holding presence. And that's really what it's going to come down to. So as we go throughout our day, we have to be awakened to our perceptions. We have to meter our thoughts and our words so that we can create a reality that feels good for us in a non-judgmental space so that we can love each other and accept each other and live to our fullest degree, to our ultimate purpose.
Yes, it's very true, Paul. And what I would say is that all things inside of our reality are energy. And ultimately, every part of ourselves that's conveying energy to us is an opportunity for the perception of beauty. If we hold the space in the present moment for that possibility of beauty happening, we're going to energetically be able to manipulate our world in a way that serves us. The martial artist looks at the attack as an opportunity to take that energy and not only defend themselves, but also not harm the individual that's attacking them. A true martial artist is a healer. And that place of taking energy and putting it into a place in which we find flow again is a part of mastery of our own selves.
This has been an amazing podcast. I really want to thank you, Andrew, for taking your time and for sharing such important, vital information with my audience. It's my hope that talking on these topics will awaken, will allow people to understand their true power and to understand that reality is exactly what you make of it. So if people are interested in learning a little bit more about you, where would they look for you? Where would they be able to find you?
Most visible through my company, Drumming Sounds. Drumming Sounds is the vehicle that I have used to transform and to create a cultural architecture that serves my process, which is this idea of production for the means of restoration, producing to restore people, families, community, and the planet. And I've done that through drum circles. That's what I use. That's my tool. And I'm in hospitals and I'm in festivals, and you can check me out, drummingsounds.com. I'm also available for private one-on-one sessions with people, and I'd love to talk about how we master our individual process as being human beings.
Well, I thank you again, and I look forward to having you back on the podcast. I think there's a lot for us to discuss and to share with the world. So thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you for listening to the Are You Being Present podcast, brought to you by the Presence Projects. Remember, you have a choice. Choose to be present.